Bella, now 10, was pulling Ava's hair while Caroline smacked her with a wooden spoon.
Please, Mommy, stop. Bella, I'm sorry.
They didn't stop. I dropped my bag and ran to them, shoving both of them away. What is wrong with you two? Have you both lost your minds?
Don't you dare interfere, Elizabeth. This is my house, and I'll discipline my child however I see fit.
Discipline? This isn't discipline. It's abuse. Look at her.
If you care so much, why don't you take her? I don't want her. She's nothing but a burden.
Caroline, you can't be serious.
Oh, I am. If you don't take her, I'll beat her to death one of these days. Mark my words.
Ava was still in tears, listening to everything her mother was saying. I couldn't leave her there. I wasn't married, and I had no children of my own, but I wasn't about to let Caroline destroy this innocent child. Fine, I'll take her. Pack your things, Ava. You're coming with me. That night, Ava and I left Caroline's house. My name is Elizabeth, and let me tell you a story about my sister Caroline. Caroline's marriage was supposed to be the highlight of her life. She had always dreamed of a future filled with luxury, but dreams don't always align with reality. She married Mark at 24, swept up in his promises of a life filled with adventure. They seemed happy in the beginning, two young people in love, ready to conquer the world together. But all of that came crashing down when Caroline found out she was pregnant just a year into their marriage. By then, Caroline was at the peak of her career as a journalist. So when she got pregnant, she felt like the baby had destroyed her life. I'll never forget the day she called me. Her voice was frantic. She was obviously in disbelief.
Elizabeth, I can't believe this is happening. I was supposed to have time to enjoy my life. I didn't sign up for this.
I tried to console her, telling her that things would work out. But deep down, I knew Caroline. She wasn't ready for motherhood, not in the way it demanded patience, sacrifice, and unconditional love. She wasn't built for it, or rather, she didn't want to be. When Ava was born, Mark was ecstatic, proudly showing off their daughter to anyone who would listen. But Caroline? She looked detached, almost resentful, as if Ava had stolen something irreplaceable from her. From the start, Caroline struggled. Ava cried often, as babies do, and Caroline was always on edge.
She won't stop screaming. I've tried everything. She just hates me.
I felt sad for the baby who was always crying. Caroline refused to hold her, saying Ava hated her and wouldn't like it if she held her. That was such a ridiculous excuse. She doesn't hate you, Caroline. She's just a baby. They cry. But Caroline wouldn't hear it. To her, Ava was the reason her life had taken such a drastic turn. The years went by, and the nonchalance only grew. By the time Ava was 6, Caroline was barely trying to hide her disdain. She fulfilled the basic duties of motherhood, feeding her, clothing her, making sure she went to school, but there was no warmth, no affection. One evening, I visited Caroline unannounced. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, while Ava sat at the kitchen table, her homework spread out in front of her. She looked like she was struggling to understand the homework. When I greeted Ava, she couldn't smile well. She looked so sad.
You should have called.
Well, I wanted to check on you. How are things?
Exhausting. This isn't the life I wanted, Elizabeth. I wanted freedom, excitement. Instead, I'm stuck here, playing house with a kid who drives me insane.
I looked at Ava, who was pretending not to hear. My heart ached for her. She's just a child, Caroline. She needs you. Cut her some slack.
Well, I didn't ask for her. I didn't ask to have my life derailed. Mark wanted her, not me. And now he's always away on business trips, leaving me with an unwanted thing. She messed up my life goals.
It was clear that Ava felt the impact of her mother's resentment. She was a quiet, sensitive child, always eager to please but rarely rewarded for her efforts. One time, Ava drew a picture of their family, Caroline, Mark, and herself. She proudly showed it to her mother, but Caroline didn't care. She told Ava to leave her alone, saying she had more important things to do than look at some ugly drawing. Ava was sad, but the child didn't complain. She simply walked away with her drawing. Mark tried his best to make up for Caroline's coldness, but he was often away on travels, leaving Ava alone with her mother. The dynamic was unbearable. Caroline would snap at Ava for the smallest things like spilling a glass of water, leaving her toys on the floor, asking too many questions.
Why can't you just be quiet for 5 minutes? Or would you like me to render you dumb?
One afternoon, Ava accidentally knocked over a vase.
I'm sorry, Mommy.
Sorry doesn't fix the vase, does it? You'll be punished.
For a whole day, Caroline refused to feed Ava. Until the girl almost passed out, she didn't give her food. I often found myself stepping in where Caroline failed because I felt sad for the child. I'd take Ava out for ice cream or to the park, trying to give her moments of joy. I can vividly remember one time when Ava brought snow into the house on her shoes. Caroline forced the kid to mop the whole house that night, and she slept without any food because Caroline refused to give her any. One day, as we sat on a bench, Ava asked me if I was sure her mother loved her. The question broke me. I held back my tears and told her, of course her mother loved her.
But she doesn't hug me like other mommies hug their kids. She gets mad at me a lot. Do you think it's my fault? She said I'm at fault for coming to life when I shouldn't have.
I felt so angry at Caroline for putting such thoughts in Ava's young mind. I managed to convince Ava that she was not at fault. When Ava turned 7, Caroline announced she was pregnant again. This time her reaction was different. She seemed excited, almost relieved.
Maybe this baby will make things better.
As the months passed, Caroline's treatment of Ava worsened. She was harsher, more impatient, as if Ava's very presence irritated her. She used her pregnancy as an excuse to distance herself even further. She'd shoo Ava away whenever she sought attention and beat her up at the slightest provocation. By the time Bella was born, Ava had learned to navigate her mother's moods. She kept her head down, did what was asked of her, and stayed out of the way. But even then, it was never enough. One evening, as I visited to help with the newborn, I overheard Caroline talking to Mark.
Bella's so perfect. She's everything I ever wanted.
What about Ava?
Do I look like I care about her?
I was angry. Ava deserved so much better than this. As I left that night, I saw Ava in her room crying. I quickly went in to comfort her.
Auntie Liz, do you think Mommy will like me more now that Bella's here?
I couldn't bring myself to lie this time because I knew that wouldn't happen. Instead, I hugged her. You're an amazing little girl, Ava. Don't ever forget that, okay? Caroline's resentment toward Ava didn't just linger. After Bella was born, she became the center of attention. Bella looked exactly like Caroline from birth, and Caroline doted on her. Ava, who had already learned to tiptoe around her mother, now faced an even harsher reality. Caroline would hit her for the smallest mistakes, her hand flying at the slightest provocation.
Why can't you be like your sister? She's a joy, and you're nothing but trouble.
Ava would flinch at every raised hand, every shouted insult. She stopped asking for hugs, stopped trying to share her little achievements. Bella, meanwhile, basked in their mother's affection, and as she grew older, she began mirroring Caroline's behavior. Bella was 4 when she first refused to share a toy with Ava.
Please, Bella. I just want to play for a little while. No! Mommy says you're annoying.
It was the start of a pattern. Bella would fight with Ava, screaming at her or pulling her hair, and Caroline would side with Bella every single time.
Stop bothering your sister, Ava. Can't you see she doesn't want to play with you?
Whenever I visited, I could see the pain in Ava's eyes, the way her shoulders slumped when Bella ignored her or Caroline scolded her. When Mark died during a business trip, Caroline's hatred turned worse. One day, I arrived unannounced and heard Ava's screams before I even opened the door. My heart raced as I rushed inside to find Caroline and Bella beating Ava. Bella, now 10, was pulling Ava's hair while Caroline smacked her with a wooden spoon.
Please, Mommy, stop. Bella, I'm sorry.
They didn't stop. I dropped my bag and ran to them, shoving both of them away. What is wrong with you two? Have you both lost your minds?
Don't you dare interfere, Elizabeth. This is my house, and I'll discipline my child however I see fit.
Discipline? This isn't discipline, it's abuse. Look at her.
If you care so much, why don't you take her? I don't want her. She's nothing but a burden.
Caroline, you can't be serious.
Oh, I am. If you don't take her, I'll beat her to death one of these days. Mark my words.
Ava was still in tears, listening to everything her mother was saying. I couldn't leave her there. I wasn't married, and I had no children of my own. but I wasn't about to let Caroline destroy this innocent child. Fine, I'll take her. Pack your things, Ava. You're coming with me. That night, Ava and I left Caroline's house. I rented a small apartment far from my sister and enrolled Ava in a new school, where she wouldn't have to face Bella's bullying. Slowly but surely, Ava began to heal. I did everything I could to make her feel loved and safe. I celebrated her birthdays with cakes and gifts, attended every school event, and reminded her every day how special she was. Years passed, and Ava flourished. By the time she was 24, she had become a rising star in the movie industry. Her name was everywhere: billboards, magazine covers, movie posters. People adored her, and she had worked hard for every bit of her success. Bella, on the other hand, was a different story. Spoiled and entitled, she had grown into a rebellious teenager. She dropped out of high school in her final year after getting pregnant. Caroline, desperate to help Bella, took on the role of caregiver for Bella's baby. But Bella didn't care. She partied, smoked, and stole, leaving Caroline to clean up her messes. To make matters worse, Bella's boyfriend scammed her, convincing her to sell most of Caroline's belongings. By the time he disappeared, they were nearly destitute. Caroline, who had once doted on Bella, was now miserable. One evening, Caroline showed up at the house Ava had recently bought for the two of us.
Elizabeth, please. I need to see Ava. I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I need her to forgive me.
Ava, who had been relaxing in the living room, appeared behind me. Without a word, she turned and walked to her room. Moments later, she returned holding a baseball bat.
Ava, please, I'm sorry.
But Ava didn't care. She raised the bat and began chasing Caroline and hit her a few times.
Stop, Ava, please.
Her screams filled the house, but Ava didn't stop until Caroline ran out, humiliated and bruised. Caroline returned a week later, but Ava wasn't home. This time, I decided to take matters into my own hands. You've caused enough pain, Caroline. You don't deserve her forgiveness. I released my dog, and it chased her, humiliating her just as Ava would have wanted. The neighbors saw her running like a madwoman and laughed. The third time she came, both Ava and I were ready. Together, we beat her so severely that she left bleeding and swore never to return. She went to our family to complain, but no one sided with her. You're reaping what you've sown, Caroline. Don't expect sympathy from us. Caroline was left alone to deal with Bella and her reckless behavior. Ava, meanwhile, continued to rise in the industry, becoming one of the most beloved actresses of her generation. Whenever people asked about her mother, she would tell them, "I'm her mother." At events, she introduced me to everyone as her mom, and I couldn't have been prouder. Ava was my daughter in every way that mattered, and I loved her more than anything. By the way, Caroline suffered from a stroke a year later. Bella didn't want to take care of her mother, so she took her child and ran away. The last time I heard about them, Bella had tried to sell her child but was caught by the police and arrested. Her child was seized by the government, and she was in jail. Caroline was paralyzed with no one to look after her. Ava and I were happy, and Caroline's misery wasn't our business, so we stayed out of it. Thanks for watching.